I think we're live. How's it going? Oh, can you see me?
I can see
You're
you,
moving. Greg, I can see you. You're moving. You're still here. I guess it was just the fucked up internet.
but I don't see it on my phone though. The connection on the phone, the
Oh, I can see it on my phone.
huh.
Everybody who's tuning in live is like, what are they doing? So we've had a few technical
Oh, there we go.
difficulties. This is our third attempt at starting this. We've been trying this for like 20 minutes now. And the tech gods have been angered. First, I don't know what I did. It's because I kicked my computer last week, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so we are now live, and I am here with Greg Berger. He is a burger and bread aficionado. He's the author of the awesome cookbook Buns and Burgers. And his book is really awesome if you love buns and burgers. I actually have it here. I should have actually gone and got it. I'll go grab it in a second. You can find his book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can find it at your local bookstore. There it is, Buns and Burgers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a comment below or I'm going to drop a link below in a comment so that you guys can check it out. But if you want to check out Greg right now, his website is thefreshbreaddaily.com. And Greg is known all around Sacramento as being like a Greg god, a bread god. People like seek him out and try to find his bread. They ask for his bread advice. Like he consults with restaurants. And so he's generally known in Sacramento as like one of the smartest bread people in town. And that's why I'm really excited to interview him. So thanks for being here, Greg.
Thank you for having me.
So a couple questions. First, how did you get started with bread? Do you have an official education?
I do not have an official education. I've always been really into cooking, and then about 8 or 9 years ago, I read Michael Pollan's book, Cooked, and there was a whole chapter on there about sourdough bread, and bread baking was something I'd never given any thought to at all. And it was just an intriguing chapter of that book. And then in that book, he tells you to then go buy Chad Robertson's Tartine Cookbook, which had just come out.
That's a great book.
And so in that book, it has like a 35-page recipe for making your own sourdough. Like it just slowly walks you through that whole thing. And so I did it, and it worked. And then I kind of got hooked from there.
So how did baking bread lead to burgers?
Well, the baking burgers just sort of, I was doing sourdough all the time. And then I started branching off and making pizzas and English muffins. And then I started making hamburger buns. And then my friend Rodney, who puts on the Sacramento Burger Battle and runs the Burger Junkie page, I started making slightly different kind of buns than you could get, in the store. And then he loved them and started using them in his pictures. And so then I just started, started thinking about different kinds of burger buns. And, when you look at a regular burger cookbook, there's usually, if you're lucky, there's one recipe for one standard bun. And it's often not that easy to do that recipe. It's not like the easiest recipe because I don't know if they even are using that recipe.
Totally.
And so then I just started experimenting, doing different kinds of buns, and they were working. And so I started doing more.
Let's do a quick shout out for Rodney. Rodney Blackwell is like he's a burger god, right?
He is.
And he's on Instagram under Burger Junkies. I don't remember, is there an underscore in Junkies or is it just
I think it's one word, Burger Junkies.
Burger Junkies. And if you're on Instagram and you love burgers, follow Rodney. Like it's like super duper burger porn. Like he finds the best burgers in town and all over the country when he travels. And I mean, it's like you see his feed and it's like, oh my God. I want that right now. So how was it writing a burger book? Like, I wrote a mac and cheese book. And so right. I know it can be kind of not a challenge. It takes a lot of creativity to come up with like a bunch of mac and cheese recipes. So I imagine it's similar for burgers.
Right. So the original idea of the book that I pitched to the publisher was that I was going to have, a different bun for every burger. And at that time I had only come up with about 10, but I was pretty confident that I could come up with more. But then it ended up I needed about 32 different buns with 32 different burgers.
Wow.
And so coming up with the different burger isn't that difficult, but it was coming up with 32 different buns. And that, because those were things that don't exist. Like there's a million different burgers out there. You could just Google, you can find a breakfast burger, and you can find the Bloody Mary burger, just by looking at other people's recipes and cookbooks, but to come up with the actual different kind of bun got a little difficult.
Well, I think most people they just think of a bun as kind of a bun, and like the fanciest they may get is like they may go get like a brioche bun.
Right.
So when you're pairing buns with burgers and you're working with different kinds of buns, like how do you decide what kind of bun goes with what kind of burger?
Well, it kind of goes back to that you want sweet whenever you're doing anything. It's that salty, sweet, savory, all those different elements you kind of want in that same bite. And so if you had if you're gonna have a sweet bun, you want to make sure that the insides don't have a lot of sweet elements. And if you have a bun that's kind of tangy, like I have a blue cheese buttermilk bun, which the bun itself kind of tastes tangy. So then the burger itself, you want to have something like caramelized onions in it, to add a sweet element. So it's sort of just trying to balance all those different elements.
That's true. It's like, because I did the same thing with mac and cheese, and that's actually one of the things that I teach a lot in the Fearless Cooking Club is that you want to kind of have like flavors across the board on a plate, right? So you don't want to have like everything sweet or everything salty or everything tart. Like you kind of want to have a little bit of each, and they all accentuate each other and work together.
Right.
So
and then there was also certain elements I knew I wanted in a burger, and then I would try to think of what bun would go well with that, or So I knew I wanted a cornmeal flavored bun, like what would go well with that kind of sweet corn flavor. So.
Oh man, that sounds divine. I want a burger. So what made you decide to write a burger book instead of a bread book? Because initially you were well known for bread.
Right. Well, I think it was, I was trying to think of something. I knew I wanted to do a cookbook. And at the time I was doing a lot of different buns. And it just seemed doing a burger bun cookbook was sort of like the logical first book, because there's plenty of, I learned how to do it from the Tartine cookbook. And so if you want to know how to make sourdough bread, you just buy that book. It's a complete book already. And so when I was, and so when I was just thinking of, what would the cookbook be, the burgers and buns just kind of presented itself as like the obvious first choice of here's how to, because the buns themselves are fairly easy to make. So I wanted it to be a book that was accessible to people, easy to do. That the sourdough is sort of a step, should be kind of like the next step after you do buns, maybe. It's a little more complex, more things can go wrong. But making buns is fairly easy process.
Yeah, no, totally. And actually, like your book is totally unique. It's very original. Like I can't think of any other. I have a lot of cookbooks. I have over 1,000 cookbooks, and I'm like, I got my finger on the pulse of the cookbook world. Yeah. And I can't think of a single book that just pairs buns and burgers. Like you said earlier, you might see, maybe one or two interesting bun recipes, but this is like bun magic.
Right. I was actually upset that on Amazon, they set your rankings, like they set the categories that you're in. And my book is not in the bun making category. It's not in a bread category. They put 3 categories, and it's like meat and grilling, and then meat, and then something else. And it's like
wines and dairy.
Yeah. Oh,
and there's like a cheese section,
right?
And then while I was a cheese primer, right, when they put it just in general dairy, I was like, thanks, dudes.
Yeah. Dairy.
Yay, dairy. For a while there was like #1 in dairy, and I was like, what does that even mean? So
right.
So do you plan on writing a bread book down the road?
I think so. I think if this continues to go well, I think the next logical book would be kind of the same format, but it would be breads and then sandwiches. So it would be a sandwich with a different actual bread for each sandwich.
You could do a whole sandwich empire.
I know.
Oh,
it's kind of an unlimited resource there.
I love that. There's actually a town in Cape Cod that I stayed in briefly called Sandwich. And it's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Like you should go take your picture there at their city sign. And like actually, so they have like all the police cars, they say sandwich police, which I think is hilarious. Every time I saw it, I was like, and they were like, not funny. So I got to ask, what's your favorite burger in the book? Like, or in general, what is your favorite burger in general?
My favorite burger in general, my favorite buns in the book are the little black ones. There's a recipe that uses activated charcoal. And so I can't remember, screen just went.
It's a good hangover cure bun.
Yeah. That's the one I think looks the best. I think the ones that taste the best to me that I crave are there's one that has cheddar and jalapenos on top of it. And then there's cheddar cheese baked into the bun. It's a good one.
Man, that sounds really good. I actually did a pie crust and melt instead of using like a regular fat. Like I used cheese, so it melted and made it all crispy and it was delicious.
Yeah.
So in your everyday life, you're a designer.
Yes, I'm a graphic designer.
How much creative control did you have over the look and feel of the book?
Well, that's interesting.
It's always
because I thought I was going to have a little more. But they originally... So I took all the photos in the book and I wrote everything in the book. And so I had complete control over that aspect of it. And then from the beginning, I had told them I wasn't sure how it was going to work. Like me doing the writing of the book, the writing the recipes, coming up with the recipes, taking pictures of it. Like there were so many small pieces that I originally told the publisher that I didn't want to design the cover and I didn't want to have input on I was just going to leave it up to them. And then they sent me the first cover and then my design instincts kicked in. I was like, no, that's not going to work.
Oh my God, book designers, like their worst nightmare must be like an author that's also a designer. And you're like,
I felt really bad for them.
Well, the first copy of Melt, like they had the L melting off the page. And I was like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
They're like, but it's cheese. I'm like, it's bad design.
Right. And so then from the beginning, I said, well, how about if I do the cover and then you guys do the insides? And so then I did the cover. And then it was like 3 days before the book was supposed to go to press, they sent me, that was the first time I saw the inside layout. And I was like, no.
3 days. Oh
3 days. And so it was a very quick, I sent them back the file that I hate receiving, which is the PDF with 1 million little Post-its saying, change this to this. So
it's your name on it though, dude. I mean,
it's my name on it.
And that's the thing, right? Even if people who know you as a designer, they're going to think you designed it. And if it sucks, they're going to be like, what happened?
Right. So in the end, I'm happy with the way it all looks.
Oh, it's beautiful now. I love it.
It's not necessarily what I would have done, but
Actually, do you want to share the URL for your design site in case anybody wants to check it out? I don't know if anybody can spell palm.
It's my graphic design website is pomdesign.net. So it's POME design.net.
Excellent. And you guys should check out his work. Greg's an amazing designer. He's done a lot of t-shirts for events around town. Didn't you do the one that was like the Not My President in all the different languages?
Yeah.
Wherever you travel in the world, it says Not My President in the local language.
Yeah.
Like I was freaking brilliant. I remember I saw one of those and I was like,
someone actually asked me to do that because they were traveling overseas.
Oh my God.
They wanted everyone to know.
So. Is that t-shirt for sale?
It is. You can get that through through the Palm Design. There's a t-shirt link.
There you go. If our current president is not your president, you should buy that t-shirt. Yeah. So I've got a bunch of questions here asked from people in the group. And at some point I'll check my phone and see if there's been any more. I got a bunch by email because I sent out the email to my list as well. Because there's a lot of people that aren't on Facebook. So when this is done, what I'll probably do is post this replay on YouTube so that they can watch it. A lot of people that are anti-Facebook and I totally get it. So the first question is from Jen. She says, I'm going to kind of condense it because it was kind of a long question. It says, I am always looking to find a different burger than like standard classic, but still something that is easy to make. Please help me find an easy alternate for the classic burger. It must have cheese.
Wait, the burger or the bun?
That's a great question. Let's assume both.
Well, for the bun, if you buy my book, there's recipes. One of them is called the easiest bun recipe. And it's a very simple, there's 7 ingredients that all go into the mixer at once. There's no there's no mixing the yeast beforehand. It's just everything dumps into the mixer at once. You mix it for 8 minutes, let it sit in the mixer for about an hour, form it into buns, let that sit for about an hour and a half, and then you bake it. And then you have buns.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then, so there's, so for instance, if you want cheese in that, there's the cheddar cheese jalapeno recipe, which is pretty much adding cheese to that same recipe. And then right before you bake it, instead of putting sesame seeds or whatever seeds on top, you sprinkle cheddar cheese and jalapenos.
Oh, that's
so you
brilliant.
have a cheddar cheese bun.
That's brilliant. Like, I really dislike grocery store bread. Like, I don't know, like, anybody watching this, I don't know if you ever looked at the ingredient list on grocery store bread. It's like, so bread literally is just flour, water, and salt, right? And yeast.
Right.
Often yeast just comes from the air, right? But if you buy grocery store bread, it's got like caramel coloring in it, and it's got preservatives, and there's BHT added to the bag, and it's really no bueno. And like the fact that you can make epic burger buns in like 30 seconds of work and then like an hour of it just sitting there, like that's
it amazing. Really is quick.
Yeah. So what page is that on? Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
It's the first bun recipe in the book is the easiest buns.
Is there a picture of it?
Well, that.
Oh, there we go. Those are the easiest buns.
There they are.
Look how beautiful those are. Buy the book and make your buns. Get your buns out in the book.
And then, so for the burger itself, I don't actually, Rodney would kill me when I say that I don't really care for American cheese. It's not my favorite. He loves it. He swears by it. I think that there's plenty of other cheeses to put on buns or on your burgers. So if you want to use that, you just froze up. So there you go.
Oh, there you are.
So for instance, like your classic burger is going to have lettuce, tomato, onions, cheese. So if you want to just take the easy step or an easy step away from that, instead of fresh onions, put caramelized onions. Instead of lettuce, arugula, or sunflower sprouts, or some sort of other green. There's a million other greens you can put on there to make your burgers slightly different. Play with instead of just straight mayo, grill some green onions and char them up and chop that in, mix that into your mayo.
Sounds amazing.
I like to put honey on burgers. So instead of there's only one recipe that uses ketchup in my book, and it's to make kind of like your classic special sauce with it's mayo and ketchup mixed with pickles in it. But none of the other recipes use ketchup, even though I like ketchup. But
I like ketchup.
You could try something different by like honey or spicy honey, drizzle that over your burger. Like, it's amazing.
Or you can make your own ketchup. Like, I love making my own ketchup. I actually throw pineapple juice into my ketchup because it gives it a really sweet tart, and it's like it just sings, right? Like, I love things that like sing on my palate, like when it hits like the back here and it's like bam, right?
Right.
Pineapple juice, yay! So we have a question from Tarashawn, and she asks, "How do I make the best burger without a grill?"
Well, I actually did not have a grill for half the time I was writing my burger book. Just circumstances.
Wintertime.
It was winter. The gas grill the bottom fell out because I left it out in the rain. And then
we're going to have to replace ours for the same reason. I was like, what happened here? It's like holes in it.
Right. And then I have a Weber grill, but I was writing the book in the winter, so I couldn't go outside. So most of the burgers in the book are just made with a pan on the stove. And you can make a delicious burger. Just heat up your pan, and you try to make your burgers a little thinner when you're doing it that way, and then just salt both sides of the meat, put it into the pan, and cook it for about 4 minutes on each side, and you're good to go.
What sort of pan are you using? Using a cast iron?
No, it's just a nonstick skillet. You could use
awesome.
a cast iron, but I did not.
Okay. And then when do you salt your meat? How far ahead of time do you salt it? Just right before you cook it, or do you salt it before?
About 10 minutes before to kind of let it soak in. But
okay.
I think you're gonna survive if you do it either way.
Totally. So I've got a question here from Robert, and he asks, what does Robert ask? He asks, how important is the type of ground meat you use? Is it better to grind at home? Because I only have a food processor.
I do not grind it at home. I feel like that is a next level item. I'm going to leave that for Hank Shaw. And
cleaning your food processor after grinding beef is no bueno.
Right. And I feel like we have a household of just 3 people here. So to be grinding my own meat here just doesn't seem economical or time, I'm going to spend my time making the buns, not grinding the meats. But that said, I got all the meat from the book came from V. Miller Butcher. And so
V. Miller is an amazing artisan butcher locally, for those who don't know.
Yes. So I feel like it's very important to know where your meat came from. He's getting all his beef from Stemple Creek Ranch. Like, he knows the ranchers. They get the beef. They grind it themselves. So that's where I feel like the importance comes in.
Do you know what his fat ratio is? I've never asked him.
I believe it's 80-20.
Okay. See, that's the thing about a burger is you want to have, like, people like to go leaner for, it's more of a steak burger. But the problem is that with less fat, like, you get less juicy burgerness.
Right.
So, you definitely sacrifice.
Even if you're getting it at Whole Foods, I believe it's almost always 15, 20.
Well, recently they had like 93% lean, and I was like, what's the steak?
Right. Yeah. Because if you try to do that and you put that into your pan, it just sort of, nothing happens.
Yeah, no, totally.
You kind of need a little bit of that fat to also kind of start cooking the burger. So.
Well, yeah, because burgers are moist, right? And so when you take out all the fat, then you just literally have a steak. And so here's a great advice, actually, for anybody who wants to make a really good burger. If you're trying to, like, be healthy by cutting back on your fat, I get it, but you'd be better off buying higher quality meat in general, that you know where the meat came from.
And you can also make a smaller burger. Like, you don't have to make a restaurant style burger at home. They're giving you 1/4 pound of beef. Like, you can easily make a good burger at home with a 1/4 pound of beef, and then just stack up the condiments and the lettuce and the tomatoes and whatever else you put on it. So
yeah, absolutely. Make sliders.
Have a salad with it.
So Erica asks, when making a burger, what's the best way to make a patty that won't fall apart while flipping on the grill? And then Laura had added a comment about the divot in the middle.
Yes. So you can buy if you're going to the butcher shop, or Cordy Brothers, or your store butcher, or going to the butcher shop, they sometimes already have it formed into a patty. You can also just buy a brick of ground beef. I usually end up getting a brick of ground beef, and then you just sort of make a ball and then squish it down, and then and kind of pack the sides in so it's a puck. And you can stick it into a ring also to make it a perfect, but I'm not always concerned about it looking perfect. And then in the middle of it, you can kind of stick your thumb down to make a divot into the middle of it, because the middle is going to cook slower than the outside. So you want to make the outside, so it's almost like a donut without the hole going all the way through. So,
how thin do you smush it? Like, how much of a divot do you put?
Not that much. And I'm not even sure, like, how you just want to make sure that when you're pressing it down, it's pretty flat all over. That divot, I think, is better if you're making like a hockey puck size, like a big thick burger. It's not going to cook all the way through. But then also, when you put it onto the grill, let it cook for a couple minutes before you start playing with it. Like, so if you let it sit for the first 4 or 5 minutes before you flip it, it's going to be less likely to fall apart.
So how many times do you flip your burger? Because everybody has an opinion on this. Like, was it Alton Brown said, do not touch your burger, you flip it once. And then everybody is like, no, you flip it every 10 minutes, or you flip it like 3 times, right? Everybody's got a different opinion.
I generally put it down in the pan, let it sit for 4 or 5 minutes, then flip it, and then put the cheese on the newly cooked side, and then cook it for another 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how thick I made the burger,
Okay.
and how hot the flame is. And usually I'm doing 3 or 4 at a time, so I always take one before I put the cheese on it and kind of cut the middle of it to see how they're doing, because you can stick a thermometer in there, but if your patty's only that thick,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
So
Most likely you're going to stick your thermometer right through, and
yeah, you're not going to get an accurate reading. It's ridiculous.
You're not going to get an accurate reading.
So how tightly do you pack your patties? Because I know that was one question that somebody had asked somewhere along the way. Because like if they were packing their patties fairly loose, and then when they flip them, they're just like bleh, and they fall apart.
I pack mine pretty hard. So like I squish it. Like generally I take a piece of the parchment that I'm using and I push it, push down on it onto the tabletop so you're getting a flat side, but I do a pretty good squish.
Okay, I like the idea of putting it in a ring too, because you put it in the ring and you squish it, it's going to compact, but it's going to stop at the edges of the ring, and it's going to just be really tight and compact. And then you can move the ring, and then you've got your burger. So you just need one ring for 1,000,000 burgers.
Right.
So that's pretty handy. Let's see, what else have we got here?
And also, I was going to say, I wrote on the when I prematurely answered questions on the Facebook page, you can also, on your grill, you can get a baking steel, like a sheet of steel that you can buy, or a cast iron flat plancha, and you can stick that right onto your grill, and then that heats up, and then you can cook your burgers right on there, so nothing falls through. It's sort of like turning your outside grill into a flat top.
I've actually seen people do that in their fireplace, which is interesting. As long as they're not using a Duraflame. But like if they're using, don't use a Duraflame to cook; it'll kill you. But if you have regular wood fire, I've seen people actually set up like this. It's like a, I don't know what you would call it, like a sawhorse kind of, right? And they just put their flat cast iron grill right in the middle of it, and they cook their burgers at home in their fireplace.
Yeah.
I like that.
I don't do that.
That's definitely like next level, like home cooking nerdiness. I love it. I also have, I don't want to set my cats on fire. So.
Right. But then you also, so the problem with that method is that the steel then takes a long time to cool back down before you can take it out. And then most likely you're going to shut the grill and forget it's in there. And then you're going to go back 2 weeks later, and then your dirty piece of metal is going to be all rusty. And so. Yeah,
it's going to have like rusted, fused itself to the grill. Great.
Right. You have to be careful with that.
So, I guess you kind of answered this anyway, but I want to ask it anyway because she asked, and I don't want her to think that I skipped her. Joni asks, how can you guarantee even cooking of a burger from edges to middle? And you already mentioned the divot in the middle, but do you have any other tips?
Just when you put it into you don't actually need even cooking through the middle, because the middle can be a little pink. But if it's too red in the middle and your edges are burning, you probably just have your heat turned up too high. And so you're burning the edges before the middle has a chance to cook. So maybe try a little more uniformed shaped patty. Like if you're pushing it in your hands, you're probably not getting a flat, you're getting a
Oh yeah.
You're not getting a perfectly flat patty to start with. So you want to, try to start with a flatter patty and maybe a thinner patty if you're having trouble not getting a uniform cook through the middle.
So what heat are you cooking your burgers at in your pan? Or on the grill, actually, for both?
About medium. The grill's a little harder to base that on because I'm using charcoal now since my gas grill died.
Oh my goodness, the comments just popped through on BeLive. Thank you, BeLive gods. So what are people saying? Woohoo, it's working. Yes, thank God. Technical difficulties averted. Why is your book not called Bread, Buns, and Burgers with an E? I love puns. Hashtag I love puns. Unfortunately, it just says Facebook user. It's not telling me who made the comments, but that's cute. Yeah. And then somebody says, lol, I work at Amazon. Then you have no excuse for not buying the book. Someone says, yay, I'm listening in the car on my way to work. Woohoo. Ketchup is super overrated. So I love ketchup, but it is kind of a one-trick pony in a lot of cases, right?
Right. I like ketchup with my fries.
Yeah. Oh, so somebody asks, what are your thoughts on Impossible Burgers? I'm trying to eat less meat, and I would love an excuse to try out different burgers with plant-based patties. And this is interesting because I recently had one for the first time, and I was pretty blown away. Like it tasted a little mushroomy to me, but like I might have just thought that there was mushrooms in the sauce.
Right. I guess my opinion on is that I had one, I tried it, and I thought it was pretty good because, mainly with the burger, the more stuff you put on it, that's kind of what makes the burger itself too. But then when you flip that over and you look at the ingredients list on the back, it's kind of disturbing, how many ingredients go into an Impossible Burger. So in the book, there's 4 or 5 different vegetarian burger recipes. Like I would much rather spend my time making a bean patty than to have a vegetarian burger. I would much rather have, sweet potato black bean burger than the Impossible Burger. So, but I'm not,
It is.
When I eat a vegetarian burger, I'm not looking to replace the meat flavor. I would rather it just be a whole different experience.
Oh, totally. Well, there's this whole so I was vegan for a while, and then I married into a ranching family, and we raised animals and ate them. But they were happy animals till they did the X-Ball, so it was totally aligned with my beliefs. So when it comes to like meat analogs, like there's this whole school of thought. It's like if you really want to be vegetarian, stop trying to recreate meat. Just give it up, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think makes a good vegetarian burger? And like, what are your criteria for judging a vegetarian burger?
Well, part of it is that you're taking the protein out of your burger. And so when you're making a veggie burger, it needs to have the protein put back in. And so I think a component of that patty that you're putting back in has to be beans, or there's a couple of recipes in my book that use fish, that there's a salmon and a cod burger. And so you kind of, you want those back in. So then you need some sort of binder. So I'm often trying to use some sort of healthy whole grain. So there's a few that use quinoa, there's brown rice, there's one that uses the forbidden black rice.
Forbidden.
It's forbidden.
Contraband rice.
Available at Whole Foods.
Well, what is the end result? Like, what do you think makes a good vegetarian burger as far as like the texture and the flavor? Because like it's never going to be meat, right? So like, what do you look for?
I look for something. You want it to have a little more punch of flavor, so the spices are important. You want it to not necessarily be mushy, because so you want it to be crisp. You want it to have some texture to it, extra flavor. So when I'm making a vegetarian burger itself, like the toppings I put on it, you also want it to be a little more punchy. So like, if my fish burger has pickled red onions and it has mango, and so it has these kind of bolder flavors you might not put on a regular burger. I don't know.
Okay. Because somebody will ask or somebody will want to know. Do you have any thoughts on gluten-free buns?
On what?
On gluten-free buns?
Oh, on gluten-free buns? I have not tried to make the gluten-free buns. So I know they're out there and they're available. I've had Pushkin's, which is a bakery in town here, that they make a great one. But I figure by me having gluten-free buns in here, my house is not gluten-free. There's so much gluten and flour floating around my house.
That's a good point. There would be no way to contaminate your kitchen.
I've had some people ask me to make them gluten-free buns, and it's like, it's not going to be gluten-free.
Totally. So I have a question here, and it seems to have vanished, but I think I'll try to. What are your best tips for people who are making like sourdough bread at home, just in their regular home oven with their regular home tools? Because like success can really evade home baker. Yeah, I've had a lot of people in the group who bake bread and then it just doesn't brown, or it's like weirdly crispy on the bottom and the top and the middle is weird. And so just, do you have any like general advice for people that are making sourdough bread in their home ovens, like with their own home equipment?
The general, like my stove is just a regular stove. The equipment that I use is just regular equipment. But it takes a long time. Like everybody's ovens are different temperatures. Everybody's pot that they're baking it in is going to be a little bit different. Where you stick it in their fridge to cool down, for like the resting periods. Your refrigerator itself has different levels of coolness. And so to me, it's a big trial and error. Like when I look back at the first time I made sourdough bread, it works, but then looking back at a picture of that sourdough bread looks nothing at all like the bread that I'm making 8 years later. And so my advice is just that the ingredients to make bread, it's, especially for sourdough, it's salt, water, and flour. That's it. And so it's a couple dollars worth of ingredients, if that. And so you just keep trying it. Like, it takes a long time to kind of figure out, oh, the book said let it sit for 5 hours, but in my house, my kitchen is warm or my kitchen's cold, so it might take, you might realize, oh, maybe if I took an hour off that resting period it told me about, I'll get a different result.
So what are your thoughts on, or how do you actually introduce steam to your oven? Because like when I was working in bakeries, like we had ovens that had like a steam feature, which was great. So baking bread at home is always a pain in the butt. And I'm like, okay, so I've got a hot pan in there and then I pour, the pan warps, and like, or a spray bottle, which is kind of ineffective. So what are your thoughts on steam at home?
So I don't add steam to the oven because because like, just like you said, it gets crazy. Like I remember a couple years ago, a friend and I were going back and forth with like different techniques we were trying to get to add steam. And we were putting like lava rocks and in pans and pouring hot water into it and
all over yourself inevitably.
Towels, and it just all felt so dangerous. Like I was going to set the house on fire. Totally. So that when I finally, I lost your audio there.
Oh, I think it's really impressive that you don't use steam on your bread, because your bread is beautiful, and I always figured that you steamed it.
I don't steam it. So when I bake my sourdough, I use a Dutch oven, a cast iron Dutch oven, right here. So that's what I bake the bread in. And so, they're expensive, but you can get them at Marshall's, or you can always find them on sale. And so the first 20 minutes of baking it, the bread is in there with the lid on, and then that's where the steam is coming from. The steam is coming out of the bread, and then it's steaming the outside, and then it bakes for 40 minutes. So the first 20 has the lid on, then you take the lid off for the second 20, and that's when the crust cooks. But the buns don't use steam. That's just throwing them in there like you would do cookies.
Oh, that's awesome. It's funny because like I fought with it and I was like, must have steam. That's what I was taught. You must have steam. Like I poured hot water on myself more times than I care to count. It's ridiculous. It's not worth it.
Right. Well, and you also have to be careful because if your oven's hot and you open it up, if you accidentally spill the water onto your door, like onto the glass, it'll shatter that glass.
Oh yeah.
So.
And I've given myself like a steam burn.
Right.
Like, because I'm in there pouring it, and the steam is like burning hands, and I'm like, no, I gotta get the water there. Ridiculous. This is not worth it. Pretty funny.
So there are certain breads that would do better if I had steam, but I just don't, like I don't make baguettes anymore because those really would benefit from that steam. So I just don't make baguettes. We just don't have baguettes.
Or you need like a very long, narrow Dutch oven.
Right.
It is really impractical for the home user. Because I agree with your point. When you're eating a veggie burger, have one. And when you're having a meat burger, have that. I totally agree. And then somebody says that that's absolutely genius. I wasn't reading the comment. So it's something you said. I think everything you said so far is absolutely genius.
Something good happened here.
Let me check. All right. Let me make sure there's no other comments in the group or in the other posts, because I see who is saying what. Oops. Volume. I think we answered all the questions, which is awesome.
Well, somebody asked about the name of the book, and the publisher did not give me very much leeway on the name of the book. So that's
really?
why, yeah.
Well, I mean, publishers are publishers, right?
Yeah. That's where I wanted to call it Bunbelievable.
Bunbelievable. I love that. Oh, here was one more question. Whenever I make bread like focaccia, it doesn't rise like it should. What could be going wrong?
Well, there's not being there, that's a hard one, but there's a couple thoughts. Is that if you open up your cabinet and you're digging through to find those little packets of yeast, like they sell them in 3-packs, and you may not have used that yeast since the last time you had a baking project, so that could already be 5 or 6 years old, and it could be sitting up there in your cabinets getting, so those yeast could just already be dead. So yeast are alive things, even though that, it doesn't look like it. They're living in that packet. So if they heat up or cool down too much, they can die in there. So you could have a bum packet of yeast. It could happen in the store. You could buy the yeast at the store, and maybe it sat in the hot warehouse for too long and killed all their, all the yeast could be dead in that batch. And so that could be an answer. Your temperature of your house is, bleh. If your house is too hot or too cold, so when you're doing things in the winter, I don't know what I was saying there, but if it's too cold in your house, it's going to take a lot longer for something to rise. If it's too warm, it'll rise too fast and then kind of deflates. And so your house should be somewhere between like 70 and 75 degrees. I
found really good place to proof dough is in the microwave with the door open, because the little light in there actually gets surprisingly warm. And back in the day, we had oven lights, right, which was warm, and now they don't really have those same lights anymore. Right. I have an old oven, so it does. But like the microwave, I actually put a little thermometer in there, and it actually hits like a perfect 81 degrees with the light on.
Yeah. So if you can find, you want to make sure wherever you're rising your dough there's no draft. I know here in Sacramento, it's, today's going to be 99 degrees. Tomorrow is going to be like 70. So
thank God.
If I make bread today, it's completely different tomorrow, the amount of time it's going to take to do each step. So you kind of just have to watch those steps.
Totally. And I think practice is really important too. So people, like Greg said, flour and water and salt are cheap. So make bread all the time if it's important to you. And then if it doesn't work, then just cover it with butter and eat it, or feed it to the birds or whatever. But the reality is that you need to know what bread looks like when it's done proofing, because if you bake it when it's not fully proofed, or you bake it when it's overproofed, it's going to be drama, right? You need to know what it looks like and what it feels like. And that's the only way that you will ever.
Right.
Oh, I think you froze.
I lost you.
Oh, there you are. All righty. So thank you so much for your time. Where else can people find you online? Like if you want to tell them where to find your book and your website, or if you're on Instagram.
I'm on Instagram at The Fresh Bread Daily. And then there's a Facebook page that's also The Fresh Bread Daily. Those are pretty much the same pages, but I post it to Instagram mostly. And then you can go to my website, which is kind of a blog. There's some recipes on there. There's more recipes as I add them. It's kind of a new blog. So that's thefreshbread.com.
Thefreshbreaddaily.com?
Freshbreaddaily.com. Thank you.
And then the book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and I think you can get it at independent booksellers if you prefer.
You can get it through IndieBound, and then they send me a list of local stores, but they're not in Sacramento. They were in Davis, and so I'm not sure if they actually have them. But you can ask any of your local bookstores, and they will order it for you.
So here's the funny thing.
If you don't want to go through Amazon.
I was searching the web for a picture of your books to add for the graphic for this, and it popped up on Target.com. So apparently they're selling your book at Target too.
Woohoo!
I know, that's actually huge. My book wasn't in Target. I was like, mother effer. Well,
you have better reviews.
I know, right?
So far.
So buy the book and leave a review.
There you go.
Share it on social media. Thank you so much for being here and answering all of our questions. I know a lot of people have a lot of bread and burger questions, so thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. And you can ask me questions through my Instagram page, and I'll be happy to answer more.
Awesome. People, check it out. Fresh Bread Daily on Instagram.
All right.
All right. Have a good one,
High five.
everyone.